The rule of thirds is one of the most popular composition guidelines in photography. Every single time I've had to explain something or teach anything to any photographer or photography enthusiast about photography or anything, they tend to ask me this question: what is the rule of third? How do I apply it? How do I use it? There are many guidelines out there that you can actually use to tell your stories, especially these composition guidelines. But the more you know these composition guidelines, the stronger your arsenal would be in order to help you express yourself properly and create those beautiful images that you want to create. So in this video, I'll be explaining to you what the rule of third is and how it's going to be used. But what I want to say is that it may be called a rule, but I want you to see it as a tool that you can actually use to express yourself, and you can use the way you actually want to use it to compose your image, to create more interesting images with more context and more information and more intention. If this is the first time you're here, please like and subscribe so that you can, catch up with all my weekly videos. But if not, please subscribe. It's a yes or yes. Third is a tool that you can use to add more context to your image. It's something that can actually make your image overall more interesting. There are ways you can actually apply this rule. Imagine you have a picture, a frame, and you're trying to compose this image. Composition in itself is how you frame your image, but not just how you frame your image. Your composition is literally every single thing inside your image, every element, every light, everything in those 4 lines that create that frame. So the rule of third is when you actually place your subject in a particular part of the frame to actually give context. So I'll give you an example. Imagine you have your frame and you divide your frame into 3 parts horizontally and you divide it into 3 parts vertically. Once you put your subject where these lines intersect, you are beginning to apply what we call the rule of thirds. Now, so a lot of times, as somebody who's a photographer, or maybe for the first time, or just a regular random person, you might want to place your subject right in the middle of the frame. But a lot of times, that may not necessarily give context into the image. It may not even be easy for the viewer to consume the image. But when you begin to put your subject where those lines intersect, it gives a little bit more context to the image. Let me show you why. So imagine when you divide your frame into 3 equal parts vertically and horizontally, there's some lines that intersect. So when you place your subject at those intersecting lines is when you're applying the rule of thirds. Imagine you place your subject in the middle of the frame. There's equal information on the left side as there's equal information on the right side. It makes the image a little bit daunting. It makes it a little bit boring. But when you move the image or the subject in the image to one of those intersecting lines, either to the right or to the left, it gives context to the rest of the image. So the rest of the image can help tell you what the image is about. The rest of the image can help tell that story even better. It's not a rule, it's a tool. It doesn't have to be obeyed. You have to know the rule to break it. So a lot of times, for example, if you have a frame where somebody is running away from someone, or maybe somebody is running in a particular direction, if you put the person in the dead center, yes, you will have a picture of somebody running. However, if you have put the person on one of those intersecting lines and show as the person is running all the way, you have more space to show that, oh, this is the direction in which the person is running into. However, you could also move that person to the end of the frame as if he's running out of the frame, and you have information of where he's coming from. So it kind of gives a very interesting context to your images. When you look at an image and sometimes the information or the subject is in the dead center of the image, a lot of times your eyeballs have to come together to come to the center to look at that thing. But if you actually move it to the edge, one of your eyes is actually looking at the subject, and the other eye is helping look at the subject as well. So it's a little bit easier for your eyes to look at, thereby making it easier for your mind to consume. That picture just unconsciously, naturally gives you some form of peace, some form of you feel a little bit relaxed looking at the image rather than a huge amount, a very large subject placed in the dead center of the image, right straight into your eyes. However, that's not a problem. Maybe that's what the director or the person creating the image is trying to say. They're trying to push that feeling, that emotion into you. So there's really nothing wrong. There are really no rules. They're just what you're trying to achieve. But the rule of third is something you can actually apply every single time, unconsciously or consciously, to actually create that context in your image. In cases of a moving object, you can actually apply the rule of third, opening up the space in the direction the moving object is moving into to give a more perspective into where the subject is heading. For example, if somebody is riding a bike and then you place them on the rule of third position, you see, and then you open up the space into which the bike is going to ride in, so you could give more context into the image. For example, maybe some part of that image, there's a ditch on the way, or there's a wall, or there's something. It kind of like tells a story whereby you can actually talk about the person riding the bike and talk about where the person is going. And the viewer can actually look at it and say, oh, is the person going to enter the ditch, or is the person going to, hit the wall, or what is going to happen if this person goes in this direction? You could also put it in the direction where the person is leaving the frame. It also gives a perspective of where the person is coming from. It could be somebody on a bike, but behind the person is like a lot of mud, and you're wondering, how did the person even go through this bike? This also applies to video, even like the video you're watching right now. A lot of times when you're filming something like an interview or a video like what I'm even doing right now, you want to create some space in the image to give context. You don't want to put the person in the dead center. So the rule of third is where you can actually, you place the subject, which I currently, the talker, am the subject. The subject is like the main focus of the image. The subject is what you as an artist want the viewer to focus on. The main story, the main character in the image. And right now, I am the main character in this video. So if you look at me right now, I'm placed somewhat on the edge of the frame. Not the edge of the frame, but at those intersecting lines to actually give you some context as to where I am. If I was placed right in the middle of the frame, not that it wouldn't go look well. It would, but it may not necessarily give more story or more context. So in the rule of third, there are also parts that you can apply into the rule of third, like understanding the foreground, which I am the foreground, and understanding the background, giving context in those two situations. A lot of times when you're able to separate the foreground and the background, it makes your image have layers that can help tell different types of stories. And this is how you can apply the rule of third. When you have more stories in an image, you place the main subject, on the rule of third position, and then you place other parts of, like, other subjects, or I would say other mini subjects or sub-subjects. Does that even make sense? Well, anyways, you place like sub-stories in other parts of the frame to actually tell the story easier. There's so many composition guidelines out there. Rule of thirds is just one of them. But these guidelines are to make you stronger. They're to make you become free. They're to give you freedom. Freedom is the ability to know the rule and knowing exactly how to break it. Breaking it with intention, not ignorant bliss. So anytime you go out into any space, consider the rule of third in your mind. Anywhere you go when you want to take a picture, consider it and actually frame your subject in a way that they are put in the rule of third position and see how it makes your image more interesting. If it doesn't, place them back in the center. But always practice it, because actually you then know how to actually apply it better in every single situation that you find yourself in. They can either be on the left, on the right, on the top, or the bottom, but either way, the rule of third can be applied in any way. So that's what thing you need to know. You need to step into it, you need to practice it, you need to try it a lot, and you see that you can actually create more interesting images, more dynamic images using this composition guideline. So the rule of third can be applied in so many ways. Sometimes, for me personally, in video and even in pictures, for example, in portraits, if you're trying to take portraits, if you have the subjects looking in this direction, you want to place them in a way, maybe you want to place them in a rule of third position where they're looking into the frame. For the viewer, it gives them a more relaxing feel when they see the subject looking into the frame, rather than the subject facing, this other direction and looking out of the frame. Now, you're wondering where they're looking at, and it kind of gives, it makes you a little bit uneasy. You're wondering what is on that side that they're actually looking at. But if you turn it this way, now you can see that they're looking in this direction. There's space, and it makes it easier to look at. Generally, it's something that just affects the subconscious mind of the viewer. when they're looking at these images. So when, as a photographer, as a videographer, you have to put this into consideration when you are creating stories. Imagine you have somebody on a landscape, outdoor, and you make portraits of them, and then you put them in the dead center. You're already creating an image of them in that space without any story. However, when you put them in a rule of third position, you have a picture of them, and then you have some information about the landscape, there. So it gives this idea that, oh yeah, they're outside, they're in the landscape, they're enjoying nature, all of that. A lot of stories can come out of just the way you framed that image, just the way you composed it. And that's where the rule of third comes into play. It's just like many other composition guidelines, one of those tools that you can actually use to make your images a lot more interesting, a lot more dynamic, a lot more effective, and a lot more context, I would say. So if you're watching this video, there's a reason you came here. You really wanted to understand what the rule of third is, how it can be applied, and how you personally can use it. And my first advice for you is that anytime you want to take a picture, whether you're using your iPhone or your DSLR, your professional camera, make sure, imagine that you have those horizontal lines in the image and place your subject on the intersecting lines of those lines. And whichever way you want to do it, left, right, center, top, down, just keep doing it. And before you realize, you'll start to create extremely balanced images that you've applied those rules in, and even images that you've not necessarily applied them in, but you've unconsciously applied them in. And that's really it for the rule of third. There's nothing really so complex or major about it. That's all there is to it. So if you've learned anything in this video today, trust me, just like this video first of all, so that you can actually get a lot more videos where I'll be talking about so many other composition guidelines that you can actually keep in mind, because you can actually apply many composition guidelines in one image. And it's not necessarily like you're trying to apply those things. It's just that they are coming unconsciously to you because you've learned them. So you're already beginning to see how they can be used to actually tell your stories better. So practice these things every single day, every single time you have the opportunity to take images. And don't forget, subscribe to this channel so that I will still be talking about a lot more composition guidelines that you can actually apply. I'm going to be talking about so many other things apart from just composition guidelines, even framing and your vantage points, and how you create those dynamic images in one frame. So subscribe to this channel, like this video if you've learned anything today, and if there's anything you feel like I've left out in this video, please comment in the comment section right now. And if there's anything you want me to talk about in the next video, please let me know in the comments right now. So guys, I'm going to leave you with two statements, and the first one is by Brian Clark, and he said, if you want anything stuck in anyone's head, put it in a sequence of 3. Also, Ansel Adams said, there are no rules to good photographs. There are only good photographs. This means you can apply whatever it is you want to apply and create those good images that you want to create. Anyways, if there's anything you want me to talk about next time, please let me know in the comment section. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, share with all your friends, and turn on the post notification button so you can get notified when I post the next video. See you guys in the next video.